What's going on, you guys? This is New York Adventurer 1994 here, and today is Tuesday, April 29th, 2025, and on Saturday I'm going back to Albany, New York to see my friend Robbie again, and I'm doing the Best Buddies walk for a third straight year up in Albany. And this is my fifth time going, and this is my first trip to Albany since October 2024 when I went to his softball tournament held in Glen Falls, New York, and it was for the Special Olympics. And something similar happened like 8 years ago. This happened back in 2016-17 school year, back when I was in 10th grade. And I went to Great Wolf Lodge in November, and I went to Great Wolf Lodge in October, and I went again in May, and that was my fourth and fifth Great Wolf Lodge trip, going in October and in May. I went in October and in May that year. My fourth and fifth Great Wolf Lodge trip, and I'm doing something similar with Albany this school year, 8 years later, where I'm going in October and I'm going in May again, my fourth and fifth Albany trip. What a coincidence right there. 8 years apart. And my fourth Great Wolf and Albany trip in 2016 and 2024 in October, that was like the beginning of the NHL season. My May trip to Albany in 2025 and my May 2017 trip to Great Wolf, those were during the NHL playoffs, believe it or not. And I thought I'd do this video today because I'm gonna be busy on the 2nd because I'm gonna be preparing for my trip to Albany. And that was the 8-year anniversary of when I went to Great Wolf back in 2017, but I'm not gonna have any time to do so. So I'm filming the video now because I did leave on a Tuesday and came back on a Wednesday back in 2017, and May 2nd was the Tuesday and May 3rd was the Wednesday in 2017 of when I went to Great Wolf and came back. So since it's Tuesday and this is the week of my Albany trip, my fifth Albany trip, and I went to Great Wolf for the fifth time in early May, and I left on a Tuesday on May 2nd to the 3rd. I thought I'd tell the story of when I went to Great Wolf in May of 2017 during the NHL playoff second round. And this was during the time the Rangers were playing against the Senators in the playoffs. I thought I'd do this video while the Senators are still in the playoffs, even though they're in danger of being eliminated by the Leafs tonight. So I went to Great Wolf Lodge in May of 2017, and this was during the Rangers and Senators playoff matchup in round 2. And I just gotta say, it was a horrible series against the Senators. The Rangers were able to pull off Montreal in the first round that year. They played phenomenal against the Canadiens, even though there were some challenges. And we had trouble getting past Price by getting goals. And the problems we had with Ottawa is that we had a lot of problems getting past Craig Anderson when he was a goalie for the Senators. He was like a really tough goalie when the Senators were good back in the 2010s. They were decent, not really good. They didn't make the playoffs every year, but Anderson was a decent goalie. But he looked more ready when it came to playing the Rangers. So, yeah, this was during the time the Rangers were in the playoffs against the Senators in the second round. And my trip took place smack dab in the middle of that matchup. So it all starts off with April 27th. The Rangers start their series in Ottawa against the Senators. And unfortunately, Canada's Capital won that one. And then on Saturday, April 29th, they ended up losing to them again in second overtime, even though we almost had the game. And then May comes along, and then we go to Great Wolf Lodge on May 2nd of 2017. It was Tuesday, May 2nd, 2017, and we were headed to Great Wolf. And those next two games, Game 3 and 4, were held back at the Garden. Those were the only two good games against the Senators we had in the playoffs. So, on May 1st, we were preparing for our trip. We were packing for our trip that day. And then we got up at 8 o'clock that morning on May 2nd. And we were getting ready for our trip. And we left the house at 9:30 in the morning. And then we took our 2.5 hour ride to Great Wolf in the Poconos Mountains in Pennsylvania. I remember it was actually cloudy that morning, but by the time it was 10:30, the cloudy skies started clearing up. Thank goodness. So we were on our way, and we actually watched the movie Zootopia on the way to Great Wolf. And we ended up hitting traffic in the Bronx for 40 minutes. That's what the Bronx is known for, a lot of traffic. So we were on our 2.5 hour drive to Great Wolf. It took longer because we were hitting traffic in the Bronx. And then we took a little rest stop at a gas station in New Jersey, and we continued to drive. As a matter of fact, Zootopia was already over once we left the Bronx because we were sitting in traffic for a long time. And we didn't get to Great Wolf until at least 1 p.m. Yeah, it took forever for us in the Bronx. It might have took almost an hour, who knows? I wish I remembered correctly, but it did take a while. So once we checked in, we immediately changed into our bathing suits once we checked into the room. And we didn't get those usual rooms where we had a kid cabin or a kid camp or a wolf den for the younger visitors. We actually had this one bedroom where me, my brothers, and my Nana had the living room space to ourselves, and there was a kitchen, an actual size kitchen, and my parents had the bedroom to themselves. It was kind of like what we have in Disney, where we check into a one bedroom at Old Key West and back in the day Boardwalk, where me and my brothers had the living room and my parents had the bedroom, and we had a full-size kitchen for a hotel room. Yeah, that's what we had in Great Wolf Lodge that year. We had an actual size kitchen and a one bedroom, and me and my brothers had the living room space with my Nana. Yeah, my Nana tagged along on the trip. Let me tell you a little something. This was actually our Christmas present. This was actually our Christmas present in 2016 from my Nana. She was the one that booked it for us, believe it or not. My Nana booked this Great Wolf Lodge trip for me and my brothers as a 2016 Christmas present. And it was 2 months after we went in October that year. So we decided to go again. My Nana booked us a Great Wolf Lodge trip for May. And she was coming along because she paid for it. It was really kind of her. Yeah, we were so happy. We really thanked her for it. It's really nice of her to book something to get us out of school for 2 days and have a wonderful time. So once we got our bathing suits on, we left the room and we headed straight to the water park for a few hours. We stayed for 3 hours and we started getting all wrinkly and stuff. And then we changed back into our regular clothes, back in our room. And then for dinner we went to the diner, which was nearby, at around 5 in the afternoon, and then we got back. and the sun was setting. And we actually watched the animatronic show, even though it was aimed for a younger audience. But who cares? I was still in 10th grade. And I kind of liked the animatronics. And I actually only missed half. I actually didn't really watch the third playoff game of the Rangers and Senators, even though they were winning that game. But when I'm on vacation, I focus on the trip I'm on now, and I could worry about the Rangers when I get back. So my dad was back at the room watching the Ranger game, but me and my brothers and my mom and my nana, we were out. We were still continuing our adventure, and then we went to the arcade for a few hours. My dad met us in there, and we played a lot of arcade games as much as we could, and then we got back at 9 p.m. and I was just in time for a third period. I was only able to catch the third period. That was it. And then after that, I showered and I got ready for bed. And then the next day we got up at like 8 in the morning. And on the last day we just went to the water park for a few hours until checkout. And then we left at 11:30. And then we headed home on Wednesday, May 3rd, 2017. Yeah, we had a fun Great Wolf Lodge trip, and we got home at like 2:30, 3 o'clock. Because we were still hitting some traffic, but it was not as bad as going there. And then we got back. The next day was May the 4th, Star Wars Day, and my brother actually had a 6th grade spring concert because it was his first year in middle school and he was a part of the concert. And I got back and I watched Game 4 of the Stanley Cup playoffs of the Rangers and Senators, and they won that one. And then Saturday came along, May 6th, and the Rangers were back in Ottawa, and sadly they ended up losing in overtime again. And I was really furious of how they blew that overtime. They really had that game, and then all of a sudden the Senators put it to overtime and then won it. And then this put the Rangers on the edge of elimination. So 3 nights later, we get past Kyle's birthday, and then it was May 9th, and the Rangers were facing elimination. And I just have to say the Rangers played horribly that night, and they just got themselves eliminated. And the Rangers were just going through the motions that night, where they knew it was over for them, and Ottawa was just playing aggressive, and they looked ready to destroy us. And Ottawa just pulled it off 4-2. And I just have to say, I kind of had mixed feelings about us being eliminated, because if we moved to the conference finals, we would have had to play the Pittsburgh Penguins in the conference finals, and that would have been an even bigger nightmare, because there would have been no way in heck we would have made it out alive against the Penguins that year, because the Penguins were just a destroying machine who would destroy anybody in the playoffs that year. And they were about to repeat as Stanley Cup champions, so the Rangers wouldn't have a chance against the Penguins in the conference finals. And I was really sad to see the Rangers get eliminated, because I really thought we had a chance against the Senators. But I just have to say the Ottawa Senators played fair and square hockey, and they were aggressive enough. And they had a good goalie named Craig Anderson, who was pretty tough. So our elimination was a fair game. It was fair and square. So yeah, I had mixed feelings about us getting eliminated, because we didn't get eliminated from one of my division rivals, and this saved us from playing the Penguins in the conference finals, which would have been a nightmare. And I was just disappointed that the Rangers almost had a chance. So yeah, that was my 2 week story of the Rangers being in the playoffs while I was in Great Wolf. And this is not the only time I went to Great Wolf in May during the playoffs. I actually went in May of 2014, and the Rangers were facing the Canadiens in the conference finals. And this was the year they reached the Stanley Cup final, but sadly lost to the Kings. So yeah, that was my Great Wolf Lodge trip in May of 2017. And I'm telling you guys this story because I'm going to Albany in the first week of May, just like what I did with Great Wolf. And this is my 5th Albany trip, just like my Great Wolf trip in May 2017. And the fact that I went on my 4th Albany and Great Wolf Lodge trip in October in 2016 and 2024. And it was in the beginning of the NHL season for those years, and this is during the playoffs now, and I figure I made this video because the Senators are still in the playoffs, and that was the Rangers' opponent in the playoffs in 2017. So I guess that's it. Bye.